When it comes to bleeding brakes, most people probably think of the old school method of start at the port farthest from the master cylinder and work your way in. But in the case of the Mazda 2, that's just not the way. So this time around, I'm going to explain why and show you guys how to do it using a method that I learned from a YouTuber who actually knows what he's talking about. So why is the Mazda 2 different? Put simply, the 2 has a split-circuit braking system, and basically what that means is you've got your two lines that come out of the master cylinder, but they don't go straight to the front and rear. It's actually a crisscross pattern, so you've got the passenger rear and driver front on one circuit, and the passenger front and driver rear on another circuit, and this is done with safety in mind. With this system in place, you only lose 50% of your braking ability should there be a failure somewhere in the system, and it doesn't restrict it to just one axle. The front brakes do about 70% of the stopping, so you don't want to be left completely without them in an emergency situation. Now that I've explained the why, I can show you the how, but first, I've got to get this car up in the air. Boom. So the tool I'm going to be using today is a ChrisFix one-person brake bleeder. I learned about this on his channel, and despite it being a Gatorade bottle and some fish tank hose, it actually works really well, and anyone can make this themselves at home for next to nothing. First thing you want to do is take the cap off your master cylinder reservoir, and I know it's divorced here on the Mazda 2, but there's still some to get out of here. You want to remove as much of the existing fluid as possible and transfer it over to your bleed bottle. A small syringe or a turkey baster should do the job just fine. And of course, you want to be careful not to drip any on anything important like your paint, because brake fluid will eat it up. That's as dry as that's going to get. Now you can just reaffix your lid and your hose, and now you've got the brake fluid down there in the bottom. That just lowers the risk of air getting sucked back into the lines when you start bleeding. When adding new fluid, it's a good idea to cover everything in the immediate area with some rags, because there's more than likely going to be some spillage. But just be very careful. So how does this one-person method work, you might ask? Pretty simply, actually. You just have to make sure that your jug is high up off the floor and that the hose creates this nice arch, so if there are any bubbles in the system, they'll float to about right here and won't be able to return to the system. So you attach everything the way it needs to go, you crack the line open, and you press the pedal yourself. It's pretty easy. Look at that little bubble go. Proof's in the pudding right there. The most important thing to remember is to not pump the pedal. You want to depress it fully to the floor and release it nice and slowly. If you pump it, it's just going to aerate the line and you're going to have to do everything all over again. Slow releases. Once you're certain that the fluid is coming through clean, clear, and bubble-free, it's time to seal up the line and move on to the next corner. When pulling the brake line off the bleeder, it's going to be full of fluid. Just have an extra rag on hand, and don't forget to recover your bleeder. It's worth noting that if you're completely flushing with new brake fluid, on that first wheel you're going to want to give it a few extra of those slow up and downs, just to make sure that it clears all the old fluid out of the system and that all four wheels are getting new stuff. Here at the front, it's much of the same, except we've got disc brakes. Here's our bleeder on our caliper. Focus, damn you. Well, why won't you focus? There we go. There's our bleeder at the front. Remember, you want it to be all uphill from there. And don't forget, constantly be checking your brake fluid level. And while you're down here with the wheels off, already doing some brake stuff, it's a good idea to just have a look at your brake pads, see how much life they've got left in them, and give your caliper slides a nice greasing, both of which I'm going to do once I'm done recording this. It's super easy, I don't need to include it. All you need is a 14mm wrench and some good grease. Specifically, I recommend this Sill Glide, which you can get at any auto parts store. It's good stuff. It's also worth noting that the front bleeders take a 10mm wrench and the rear is a 5/16. Yeah, oddly enough, they're two different sizes. But with that, half of the system is now bled. The other half is exactly the same, just opposite. And remember, the order is passenger rear, driver front, driver rear, passenger front. And it's just that easy. So there you have it, folks. That's how you bleed the brakes on a Mazda 2. Much like other projects with this car, pretty simple. Anyone with some basic mechanical knowledge and some tools can get this done, no problem. All you have to remember is slowly depress the pedal and slowly release it. Don't pump it, and don't let your master cylinder run out of fluid or you'll have to start all over again. There isn't all that much to explain. It's a pretty easy job, but I hope it has helped you nonetheless. That's it for me this time. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next one. When it comes to breeding, that's racist.